Good evening, everyone. You can find a seat. We're going to get started in just a minute. My name is Jenna Weiss. I'm the manager of public programs here at the Jewish Museum, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's lecture by Kenneth Frampton in conjunction, oh, it's really dark, with the exhibition Pierre Chareau, Modern Architecture and Design, on view on our first floor galleries through March 26th. This program has been funded by a generous endowment from the Saul and Harriet M. Rothkopf Family Foundation, and we thank Harriet, Rhoda, and Nolan Rothkopf for joining us this evening. Thank you again for your generous support of all the museum's public programs. I would also like to thank Esther DaCosta-Meyer, the curator of the Chareau exhibition, for joining us tonight and for all of her insight and efforts over the past few months. So thank you both for being here. For more information about all of our upcoming public programs and events, please visit our website to sign up for our e-news. Now to introduce our speaker this evening. Kenneth Frampton is Ware Professor of Architecture at Columbia University's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. He is trained as an architect at the Architectural Association School of Architecture in London and has worked as an architect, an architectural historian, and critic. In addition to his work at Columbia, Frampton has taught at leading institutions including the Royal College of Art in London, the ETH in Zurich, and the Berlage Institute in Amsterdam. Frampton is the author of numerous books including Modern Architecture and the Critical Press, Studies in Tectonic Culture, Labor, Work, and Architecture, and most recently, A Genealogy of Modern Architecture, Comparative Critical Analysis of Built Forms. He is currently at work on an expanded 5th edition of Modern Architecture, A Critical History. Now please take a moment to silence your cell phones and join me in welcoming Kenneth Frampton.
Good evening. I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank Claudia Gould, who's the director of the Jewish Museum, and Esther DaCosta-Meyer, who was the curator of this extraordinary exhibition, and who are not here, I think, but Liz Diller, Rick Scofidio, who were the designers of this exhibition. I think I've never seen an exhibition quite like this exhibition in New York for a very long time, and perhaps, or anywhere for that matter. I think it's just an extraordinary tour de force, which, yeah. I mean, I don't know. So Pierre Chareau and Bernard Befoot and the Maison de Verre have been, you know, yes, appropriately honored, I think, by this extraordinary exhibition. And maybe I should start with the image of the man. Yes. Well, I should say something else before I start, which is that sitting in the audience is Brian Brace-Tellis, sitting next to Esther DaCosta-Meyer. And he could just as, you know, he's not in his best form at this moment, but he could just as easily have given this lecture and even more, with more capacity than I have, I think. And so, because he's also written on the Maison de Verre, he's written as much as I have on the Maison de Verre. And so I'm very honored that he's also here in the audience. And, but to go to Pierre Chareau, born in Bordeaux, 1883, dies here in New York, 1950. I love the title, A Life Interrupted. It certainly was interrupted. He came to the States in 1939, of course, because, you know, it was obvious that the German occupation, he beat the German occupation by a few months, I think, of Paris, and he had no choice, really. Yes, he certainly was you know, certainly was of Jewish origin, if not brought up Catholic, etc., which I learned tonight. But nevertheless, and his wife certainly was also Jewish, Sephardic Jewish, and from London, in fact. And I met. That's also for me. This is a time machine operation altogether, because I worked on the Maison de Verre 50 years ago. I can't believe it, really, and. Actually, and I will honor the we, which is myself, but also, of course, Michael Karapetian, whose photographs are in this exhibition, but who photographed and took very many photographs of the Maison de Verre when it was occupied by the original clients, and always says to me, I was so shy and stupid, why didn't I take a photograph of Dr. d'Alsace and Annie d'Alsace, because, you know, they were there, you know. They welcomed us, they let us do what the hell we liked, basically, and crawl all over the building with tape measures, etc. And we have no photograph of them. I mean, it's completely stupid. Anyway, these lost moments. And an equally lost moment is I went to see Dolly Pierre Chareau in New York, you know, as an elderly lady. I mean, it wasn't that informative, I have to say. I mean, she obviously spoke very praiseworthy of her husband, etc., but it wasn't, you know, and it wasn't, she was not senile in any way, but it just wasn't pertinent to what I was interested in, which was the Maison de Verre. So somehow we had a kind of, well, it was a nice conversation. She was very warm, but it didn't, you know, I didn't come away with much. And then also, you know, there's a lot of accident involved, which is that I'd been invited to Princeton University by Peter Eisman, well, I was sort of visiting professor, and later I would get more involved with Princeton University, but then I taught for one semester, and the next semester somehow they gave me a scholarship. It wasn't exactly kosher. I mean, I was sort of given this scholarship whether I liked it or not, and then what do I do with it, you know, because I didn't have this idea that I would paint myself into a quasi-academic corner. I was trained as an architect, etc. I thought I would visit, you know, I thought everything would turn out differently. But I got a bit, yes, I painted myself into the academic corner. And I got this so-called Hodder Fellowship, and what do I do with it, you know? And then, anyway, cut a long story short, it was pathetic, but we went to Paris and we measured the Maison de Verre. And that's very interesting, and I will probably come back to this point, which is that the drawings, yes, these drawings are all kind of credited to me, but they're not. That's not exactly quite right. There's a whole team involved on this, and I did do some of those drawings, and I can't believe I did that. But anyway, because I've since ceased to draw long ago, and yes. Anyway, but that's what we did. We measured. I think we measured the whole house in a week, and then somehow we came back and we did all these drawings, and they were published first published in the Yale magazine Perspecta 12, which was, it was great to do that. And I should hasten to add that there were no drawings of the Maison de Verre, original drawings, because that's not the way that house was made, basically, and I will come to that in a minute. But and maybe with this figure, Bernard Bifoot, Dutch architect, well, they were probably the same age, more or less. I'm not quite sure when Bifoot was born. I mean, Chareau was born in 1883. Bifoot, I think, was a bit younger, but lived much longer. I mean, I don't know exactly when he died either, because actually we met him, being Madame Bellet d'Alsace, the daughter of the original clients, married to a Dr. Bellet. Now that brings up a whole other issue, because Dr. d'Alsace was a very prominent gynecologist, and lo and behold, his daughter marries a gynecologist, you know, a Dr. Bellet. So the tradition was carried down directly, and the Dr. Bellet practiced where the Dr. d'Alsace practiced before, in the same house in the Maison de Verre. And that is Marc Bellet, the son of the next generation, the grandson, in fact, of the original clients, and his girlfriend, and Bellet d'Alsace and myself went to Harlem, where Bernard Bifoot was still practicing, and we tried to extract from him some idea of what was the relationship between himself and Pierre Chareau. It was more or less impossible. You know, he said, you know, oh, I was just a little Dutch guy. I mean, you know, no, I don't know anything. No, everything took place between Annie Bernheim, Deltas, and Pierre Chareau. I mean, it was absolutely hopeless. And we came out and we said it was like talking to an ex-general secretary of the Communist Party, you know. It was just impossible. You know, he just wouldn't, you know, weren't going anywhere with him. And so, but I think he was, you know, really important. And there is a, I don't want to get into it, but there is a Dutch architect scholar who, you know, is trying to prove more and more that Befoot was absolutely essential, you know, that the building without Befoot would not have been the same building. And I think that's probably right. But there's another factor which has to be entered into this, which is without these clients, I mean, it would not have been the same building. I mean, all right, they were wealthy clients, or rather, I think Annie Bernheim was wealthy. And all right, they were wealthy clients, but, you know, this house was built piece by piece, actually. You know, so hence there were no drawings, or drawings that we could really think of as architects' drawings. There was no budget, there was no contract, no nothing. And the house was literally a montage operation, or you could say collage, montage. You know, they really did it piece by piece. But at the same time, there was a conception. That's the incredible thing. And it's very hard to quite reconcile these two things, because even a grid, there was a module. I mean, it's very hard to kind of, it's a little bit magical, in fact, you know, the way in which this house was made. Pierre Chareau was, had a quite different training. I mean, he was born in Bordeaux, 1883. I'm not very clear about his early life, as a matter of fact, but he did, in fact, apprentice to the British furniture firm of Waring and Gillot, where he learnt, you know, really basically the trade of an interior designer. And I believe the French term is ensemblier, which is a very much more interesting term than interior designer, because it implies, you know, putting together an assembly of pieces. And he actually, I think, did fight in the First World War, and came out and then started to practice as a designer. And obviously a very sophisticated person that was, you know, well, he had a certain clientele, and the exhibition makes it very clear who that clientele was. Also extremely sophisticated, relatively wealthy people. I mean, this was really, I think, a golden era, as a matter of fact. Paris after the First World War, until the Second World War, until 1939, when, of course, he left Paris to come to the States. And he will design a bit in the States, in East Hampton, a studio for Robert Motherwell, another little house for two sisters, and so on. But okay, it was a concert hut. It's relatively interesting. The studio for Motherwell, that is, which, you know, reused kind of military element. But, you know, the golden moment was over, and to recover it here was you know, obviously impossible. And he died in 1950. Yeah, you could say maybe, who knows how he died, of a broken heart, perhaps, you know, in terms of what had been his life. And Befoot actually, you know, he started to study architecture in 1908 in the university in Delft. He formed a friendship with Jan Dauker, who was, that then became a partnership. He formed the friendship in 1913. They opened up the partnership in 1922 in a place called Zandvoort in the Netherlands. And they were very influenced by Wright, as were many Dutch architects of that period. But in 1925, he went to the L'Exposition des Arts Décoratifs in Paris, and there, I think it's there, who knows exactly, he met Pierre Chareau, and he decided on the spot. There were other, perhaps, extenuating circumstances which led, of a rather personal kind, that led to this decision to quit the Netherlands and establish himself in Paris. But anyway, he went to Paris and he started to work with Pierre Chareau. And they worked, they were already working for, you know, in effect, Dr. Delsas and Annie Bernheim. Anyway, for the Bernheim family, in Beauvalon, they did this golf club, which is a small plan is shown of it in Beauvalon in the south in 26-27. And he, Chareau, was, of course, continuing to work as an ensemblier, as a designer of furniture and also as a designer of interiors. And this figure is also important, absolutely incredibly important, Louis Dalbey. So, you know, Pierre Chareau on the one hand, then Bernard Buffut, then Louis Dalbey, and then the clients, 5 people altogether. And Dalbey was he made fer forget, he was a ferronnier, he was an ironmaster. He, in 1917, got a Prix de Rome for a gate, an Art Deco gate. And, you know, bit by bit, in any case, by 1923, Pierre Chareau only used Dalbey for everything, for all the iron pieces in the furniture. It's always by Dalbey. And then, of course, Dalbey becomes essential to the Maison de Verre. And in fact, to be honest, and I think it's worth mentioning it, that the Dalbey family were incredibly, the feeling of the Dalbey family towards the Delsas family over the Maison de Verre was not very friendly, because Dalbey went bankrupt building the Maison de Verre, basically. And they never, of course, you could imagine the resentment. And despite the fact that it obviously cost a fortune to build this house, nevertheless, you know, the guy who made the ironwork, well, anyway, you know, whatever. He was not the happiest of solutions, you know, at the end. And, you know, this also is slightly on the borders of hearsay, because I've never met a member of the Dalbey family, but in fact, the daughter of the original client said, you know, this is a fact that the Dalbey family had a certain resentment which went on, you know, as you can imagine, forever. But so he's a very essential figure, you know, a craftsman, in fact, you know, and so without this combination, maybe the Maison de Verre could never have been what it eventually became. This is actually an apartment for Dreyfus in Paris, 1932. I mean, the Maison de Verre is already en route, because the father of Annie Bernheim bought the plot in 1928. And so basically, bit by bit, the thing was built between 1928 and 1932. And this is a kind of piece of an interior. It's not really adequate. Maybe this is a better image, which is in the exhibition, which is this cabinet by Chareau, 1928, where the iron part is probably by Dalbey, almost surely, and the walnut part is, well, by some kind of carpenter, actually probably a very skilled carpenter, and you know, precious wood, etc., etc. I mean, exquisite object. And he was full of, you know, as the exhibition shows, you know, he had an extraordinary taste and talent, and yes, he knew how to make exquisite objects. He wasn't the only one, of course, on the scene. And but that's like, I'm just showing these two pieces because you know, I want to. I'm not really doing an adequate job, but then the exhibition has all this incredible furniture in it, so it's not really essential. And then this is what the father of Annie Bernheim bought was this Hotel Particulier inside a courtyard in Saint-Germain. Fine, rather old, 18th century, of course. And on the top of this thing was an elderly lady. And they were not able to, under French law, to budge her, so to speak. They couldn't move her out. And the only solution was to put steel underneath, which you see here in various stages. So she was kept up there, and there was a separate staircase that led up to that point. And so they were working inside a courtyard and building above building below this, this piece of fabric, which housed the elderly lady, who of course eventually died, and they would rebuild in a traditional manner the stuff above. This model, which I don't know quite when it was exhibited, to be honest. Strange model, actually. I mean, no, it's in a way, it's a very precise model, but it's also, you know, it's sort of a, you know, the section is cut in a funny way, and this, I mean, the cantilevered roof that goes out beyond the glass facade, which you can see, I think, is, this is the glass brick facade. This is this cantilevered roof. Well, you know, it doesn't have that. So, but, you know, elements in the module is evident here, and the other glass facade is indicated, and this glass facade will eventually be built. Well, yes and no, because although it's there and it's still there, it's not the original glass facade. Because it's interesting because the original glass facade had mullions that were in reinforced concrete holding these glass block panels. And this facade was put in place after the Second World War by Saint-Gobain. I believe, I'm not sure about this, sort of more or less gratis. I'm not completely sure about that. But you can see that, and that also applied to the kitchen wing, which is also handled in a similar way. And this is the main entrance into the house. You see here this little thing which has the three bells for service for the medical suite and for the house itself. And I'll show it again. But this is the courtyard, of course. These ladders, in fact, which are also, I think, not quite original, and certainly these spotlights here are not original, but the function remains the same, which is to light the house from the outside at night, to flood light through the glass block wall. And so this redone facade, I'm making too much of it, well, it's still extremely elegant. You could say even more elegant, but it's not what was the original construction. And the issue there is that the original construction on this side of the house had failed, so it had to be reclad. And maybe it's a convenient point to say that, you know, in the Second World War, they of course left the house, and the Germans actually did, I think, sort of occupy the house, but they left it intact. They didn't do anything to it at all. I have no idea what they used it for. And I don't know where Annie Bernheim went, probably into the south, and her husband, Dr. d'Alsace, went into the underground. And they, of course, they came back after the war and re-established themselves in the house. Yes, what was I going to say? I don't know. Let's go move on. This is the plan of the house, and there's a very interesting thing about it. This is the street. Of course, you can't see the house. But, you know, you go through this archway into this courtyard, and then you arrive at the house. And the garage here. This is the courtyard. The entrance is here. And I'll show the ground floor plan again in more detail. But the interesting thing is that a kind of rift runs through the site. And you see some of that in the landscape, these steps here. There's steps again here and here. There's a split. Here, steps. There's a split of level that runs through the site. And the strange thing is not very much, in fact. And the, you know, the two designers together, Chareau and Bifut, keep this schism, this split in section, and that split in section not only on the ground floor, but also echoes on the floors above. It's a very strange, eccentric element. Now, this is the facade, and I'm not responsible for this design drawing, I mean, at all. But, and in fact, I don't know who is the author, but anyway, it gives you a schematic idea of the facade, and this then is the axonometric, which is in the show. Okay, about the axonometric, these ladders carry spotlights. I've already said that. The front facade has been removed in order to show the main living floor. And that's also an incredible thing, which I've never really, I don't know, maybe Brian can enlighten me on this, but I've never found the answer to this, because there is this product which is still in the market called Pirelli tiles, which has this sort of studded floor, which I think is made out of a kind of plastic actually today. But this is also a studded floor, but it's made out of rubber. And, you know, it's very strange to look at this product and to realize, you know, what a pioneering material it was. And then you're left asking the question, where did this material come from? And I don't know who developed this material, how did Chareau and Defoot find this material? I have no idea. But this, where the large square here, on the public areas, in fact, but also in the doctor's consulting room, has this studded rubber tile. And then other parts have wood block flooring, and other parts have black tiles. And there is a kind of code, really, of, you know, public is this, for want of a better name, Pirelli tile, and the dining, warm kind of family dining spaces in close blockwood flooring, and the doctor's study and is in this black tile, you know. So there is a kind of coding that identifies different uses in the floor, and also there is this kind of break in levels in the floor, also to do with the split, the sectional split that I've already indicated. And there's something I think sort of cubistic about that. You know, it's as though the floor of the house is conceived as a kind of cubistic relief. Another version of the same model, I think. Pretty primitive, but that's what they somehow were to exhibit. And of course, that's the limits of my knowledge. I don't know, where was that model first exhibited? Where, for that matter, was it first illustrated? I don't know the answer. But I do know that these drawings, you know, this is, and they're very odd drawings, really, because these are the steel stanchions that were put underneath to hold the original floor up above. And these are the storage cabinets for clothing that looks over the main living space. And this element here is the large ventilating device. And these rolling pieces were never used. They never were made at all. So it's all very kind of tentative, and it's not precise in any way. And that leads one to think that, you know, it was a kind of montage operation. So even though this structure has, that's also strange, a kind of Palladian rhythm, i.e. wide bay, narrow bay, wide bay, and so on. You know, otherwise the house there's nothing classical about the house at all. And then on the other hand, you know, these are modular elements, rational modular elements. And indeed, he wrote an essay when the house was published, briefly, just a few photos in L'Architecture d'aujourd'hui, which is a very kind of utopian essay where he spoke of the house as a kind of experiment going towards mass production, but anything less like mass production would be difficult to imagine than this house, you know, even though it is modular. So these are the ladders on which the pipes, the lamps lighting the glass wall are suspended. You enter through this door. Then there is this corridor, and this is the nurse's station. And here is the large stair that gives up to the piano nobile above and the domestic part of the house. And that's screened by a pivoting glass wall and a rotating screen. And this is the split in level I've been talking about, because, you know, if you're a patient, you are controlled by the nurse, you go here and you have to go up these steps. This is a sliding, slightly clunky folding screen, usually folded open, and this is the waiting room. And then you go down these steps, the same rift, you know, And then finally, you end up here into the doctor's consulting room. This is the examination room. And here, another examination room. You know, they're all interlocked. This is the gynecological part of the house, with a shower here. This is a sliding door, the consulting room, to the examination room. Well, this is service, and that's the service stair getting up to the kitchen above. You know, various bathrooms, but I think you get the general idea. And this is, by the way, you go through here out to the garden. So you bypass this waiting room to go out to the garden in this position. The nurse controls everything from this point. And I'm indebted to Helene Lipstadt. This shows actually the sliding door. This is the examination room. This is the doctor's consulting room. Chairs, I think, by Chareau, furniture by Chareau. This is a large sliding wall faced in aluminum. And so the difference between the spirit of this space and the spirit of this space is obviously quite marked. And here I'm showing the way out, well, the garden side, where this is the sleeping floor. This is the original upper story, which has been changed, but still in, pierced windows, masonry construction, carried on the steel system. Balcony to the sleeping floor, and here is the boudoir of Madame d'Alsace. And here, this glazing here is the glazing to the waiting room, and over here is the doctor's consulting room, with doors out to the garden also. And here you see doctor, visite, service, this category of person is anticipated in the stanchion holding the bells. And here, just in case you get confused, this is the door. And then this is an interesting thing, because this shows, this is the nurse's station with a full-height lacquered black door closed, pivoting. This is the rubber tile already leading to that door. I also ought to mention this, that the electrical surfaces are all freestanding in tubes with different switches on them, so that the electrical power, the big fuss is made out of the electrical power because it isn't in the walls. Well, sometimes I suppose it is, but it often is in these tubes. And beyond here to the left, beyond this wired glass wall, is the main stair. So if we are in this space and look in the other direction, this is the sliding door, and beyond that is the entry foyer, and beyond that the courtyard. And when this door is open, the nurse is in this position looking at this corridor, and then I'm putting these two together. This door is open now, gives you the courtyard beyond. So these are two images at the end of the same corridor. And this then opens off that corridor. Here is the glass, the wired glass wall, and this is a galvanized zinc, perforated zinc screen that rotates to open up this threshold, and this panel here, which also is screened in plate glass, swings out, pivots out to open up the threshold, so that this whole business of multiple use, i.e. at times it's a doctor's surgery, at other times it's the entrance to a very grand house with this monumental staircase leading up to the Piano Nobile. And what one notices with this, I mean, it works beautifully, still works beautifully, I mean, in terms of its literal function, but also I think one gets the first glimpse of something, which is that it's functional to an excessive function. So the moving parts are almost beyond what was really necessary, you know. They almost have, there's almost an aesthetic of the movement of the function, and that so here you see it opens up, and you can go up this staircase. One might note that this unbelievable proliferation of books, and the whole of the house, when the original clients lived in it, was layered, you know, with their, yes, with their culture, I think one has to say, both in terms of paintings and furniture and all the rest of it, but also in terms of books. And, okay, so, well, you know, this is looked at the other way. I mean, this is actually the waiting room beyond. This is the screen that is usually drawn open. And here, yes, these screens have been opened, and you can enter the staircase and go up. And this, go up to the main living floor, which is shown here. So you go up the stair, and then there's also a split here. So you go up 2 steps to get to this upper level. This is the main salon. And the weird, these are the, you know, all of these things are the steel stanchions. And this Pirelli tiling goes out in this strange fashion here. This is done in black tiles. There's a huge sliding wall here which closes off the doctor's study. This is a doctor's study, and this is a telephone booth which is acoustically isolated. And a stair wraps itself around this telephone booth, and the stair comes from his consulting room below, double height consulting room. This is a void, also double height, looking, and this, there's another sliding door here, so that he can pass over here and enter into the boudoir of Madame d'Alsace, into which drops the staircase from the bedroom above. And this is the dining room, also please note, step again. And that dining room was, well, it's a very strange thing. In this drawing, I'm sad to say, there's not even a dotted line which shows its presence, but there are they're still there. There were rails to carry a dumbwaiter through these doors into the kitchen, so that you could theoretically take the dumbwaiter through these doors and out here to serve the dining. But that thing was never finished as far as I can see. The cradle, and actually Michael Carapeti told me recently that now has disappeared and nobody knows where it went. But there was a kind of very elaborate cradle running on rails that would carry the dumbwaiter underneath. Dumbwaiter was never made, one doesn't know why. And the cradle has now also disappeared, and one doesn't know quite where the hell that went either. And so this shows you this is the pivoting door, it's hard to read, and the rotating element. Then the stair going up to the main living space, all in the same tiles which sort of code the public domain, whereas underneath it, kind of leftover space in a way, is in black, matte black tiles. And this is the area that's in matte black tiles. Also, this change in level again, you have to go up to this part, which is the entry foyer. This is the main stair going up. This is this huge ventilator, which is for the entire volume of this space. And here we're in this crazy thing of the waiting room going up. This is the nurse's station. And above here, you know, these are stanchions going all the way through. There are storage cabinets here looking over this space with other storage volumes behind, and then the bedrooms. And in this case, it's a section taken through the master bedroom or master bathroom suite, so there is also the bath here, and then the balcony beyond. And here the lights, which light also from the outside, this space through the glass walls. And there is a kind of inversion here, because Normally, of course, one thinks of masonry walls or concrete walls with pierced windows. Now we have glass block walls, but still also pierced windows. So what, the yin-yang, so to speak, of masonry pierced by, is broken there, or rather it's rendered in a peculiar way. And that's the main stair again. Now you see the tiles rather clearly in this image, and you go up. And the handrail isn't really a handrail. It's, you can't hold on to it. It's really, I suppose it's to collect the gowns of fashionable women on the way up the stair. Anyway, it's a nice detail, but it's not really very functional. And, but this image, well, it shows the section of the stair, the elevator. Well, in a way, it's not too revealing, this drawing. We can skip it. But this is more interesting because it shows art. This is an extremely interesting thing because you see the difference between these two, because the axis of the built-up steel columns, even the steel columns are not really rolled steel columns. They're fabricated, so that they're made out of angles that are riveted. And I suppose they could have been rolled. I don't know why they were not. I don't know what the story is. That's another mystery. But what is fascinating is that the color, well, first of all, the steel is painted this red oxide, which is actually quite a traditional color in a way, but then this slate is used, fixed, invisibly fixed to the flanges. But of course, where there are joints, then you can't, so that, but the interesting thing, I think, is this red and black, because it gives, along with this wood, lit from below, a definitely kind of Japanese feel to the house, I think. And, well, there is this sensibility is evident in earlier interiors by Chareau, but not to this degree. And finally, we come to the upper floor. And, one of the things about the house which is sort of mind-blowing is that I've never seen a house with so many bidets, There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. They're everywhere, along with other, of course, wash-hand basins and baths. But, there is there's a definite, here we're getting into function beyond function, There's a kind of poetic, you could say, and it also, there's something enigmatic about it, I think. And that's one thing to be said about the house. Because also you could say that the house is a kind of the ultimate total work of art, but at the same time, it isn't. It's also, I think, unique, because it can accept, very heterogeneous pieces of furniture. As it happens, all these pieces of furniture are designed by Chareau. But I don't have an image of it, unfortunately, but the dining table and the original dining table and dining chairs were, antique furniture. And actually, I'm so ignorant, I don't know from what period. But anyway, they were not designed by him. And so there is, it's not, there is a certain influence, although what influence exactly, of Adolf Loos's, ethic of, against the total work of art, really, of the whole characterized by Jugendstil, etc., etc. And so I think the other, extraordinary thing about the house is it accepts otherness, but so therefore it's not, absolute total work of art, but it is at the same time, of course, a total work of art. It's full of this ambiguity, and then this image perhaps shows better than anything else the regularity of the modular idea that governs the house. But that module is not coherent with the structural module. And so you have a montage, collage, work, I think that's how it was done. I mean, the drawings were done on the site, stuff was put in place. I mean, there was some general scheme, but you know, it was like building a medieval cathedral in a way. They were, you know, designing and making it on the spot. And then this, which is in fact every line on this damn thing is by me, is the bathroom. And now we come to a kind of, you know, I think we do finally arrive at a kind of strange thing, because this sliding door here leads to the master bedroom. But Madame d'Alsace liked baths, you see, and he has to go out of the bedroom and enter the bathroom like through here, because he likes showers. So there's a whole division here between the upright vertical shower for the male figure and the horizontal element of the bath for the female figure, with a kind of screen even that swings into position. We don't quite know why. And then, you know, all of this is storage for shirts and towels, which also rotate in excessive function. They move all over the place, you know, they are like this. This is where shirts and so on are, right? In duraluminum or aluminium, I'm not sure which, inside the bathroom, which is then covered in this mosaic of square white tiles. And this question, this issue of in the end, I think the house is very coded, male and female throughout, actually. And this plan, for example, which shows well, actually shows his study, and this is the black tile. This is the Pirelli flooring which runs through to this point, and this is the wood block flooring which goes into the dining. And here, you know, this is the point at which the montage approach gets to be very strange, but it's also a point of a joint. So you see, this is her boudoir in black tiles on 2 levels. The step is here. There's actually a hatch here for serving tea. The maid can invisibly produce tea here. And this is a stair that goes up to the master bedroom, but also is a retractable stair coming down onto the steel brick. And, well, the intriguing thing is this, that from his study he can pass over this thing and he goes through this sliding door into the boudoir. But so that all of this glass here in steel frames is wrapped around this column. It's a very peculiar connection, you know. Well, it works, of course, but, and you see the connection here maybe a bit better. It's, you see, not that much better, but this is the Pirelli element going through. He slips through this and through there, you know, into the boudoir, if he so wishes. But looking down here into the patient's waiting room, in fact, chairs by Chareau. I think this is a carpet by Hélène Henry. And of course Picasso and God knows what is like on the walls. And the black tile goes over here. And here is a little kind of greenhouse which is you know, adorns the boudoir. And the stairs coming up from his study are like a ship's companionway, really, going around the telephone booth and then yes, onto the black tiles of his study. And that, you know, that's his stair, you can say, fixed. And you see it in detail here. And here I got the sequence a bit mixed up, but this shows her boudoir level where the plants are here. You know, and you see the glass blocks in the balcony to the sleeping floor that help to light this wall, and here are the floodlights lighting this wall from the outside. And there's a gate here that leads out to the garden, which I will show you again here. This is the gate leading out to the garden. And this is actually, yes, precast concrete kind of threshold leading out to the garden. And here, the glass block wall is cut away, but this shows you the heating, so that there's kind of plenum heating used throughout the house. And this is her stair. That is to say, yes, this is the bedroom level. And this contraption works in a certain way so that the companion ladder can be dropped down into the boudoir. I mean, this is in excess of, you know, how often would you do this, you know? It's the poetics of excessive function, you know, and it, this is the guardrail around that. Well, it's a bit hard to read this, but this is their bedroom, and the interesting thing is that these windows on the module are a bit like railway windows with sliding panels that slide down into the under window panel, and well, the master bedroom. But well, actually, probably this image more than any other shows the heterogeneity of the interior. You know, that the house, although it's very obsessive, can sort of can assimilate anything. It shows again here. You see this furniture, somehow, or this carpet. I mean, it's all beside the point. You know, the house insists on its system, on its machine character, but at the same time, it's almost a parody of the machine. You know, and so that screen, for example, pivots out. This is the same screen, and behind the screen is a wash-hand basin and a bidet. You know. So, and then again, there's a split in level. Well, you know, it's again very heterogeneous. This is actually a piece of furniture by Chareau and by Dalbey together. It's all out of metal. Yeah, I mean, I think you get the point. And I love this thing, and I've always sort of promised myself I would finally make it, but I never have. It's a mirror, in fact, that slides. You know, it's mounted on a wall, and this square mirror you can adjust it in relation to this metal suspending plate. You see it here. This is the plate. The mirror slides up and down on this plate. It's very typical. And finally, there's this. Well, it's a Michael Carapetian photograph. You can see just through here, you can see the bidet and the wash-hand basin, etc., etc. This is the screen, perforate, you know. And, of course, art hung on the screen. Art is everywhere, in fact. And then finally, this image, which shows, this is the post-Second World War facade, and lit, you know, at night, so that, and there's a yin-yang here also, because you can light the interior and it will light the courtyard outside. Or you can light the interior from the lamps suspended outside, so it's either a Chinese lantern glowing out, or it's being lit from the outside at night. And these images, which are hard, I mean, this is like 50 years ago, right? It's a party in this house. And yeah, you know, obviously, it's a Michael Carapetian photograph, in fact. And this is more of the same, being lit from the outside at night. That brings up another point. That house, well, D'Alsace was Dr. D'Alsace, extremely progressive person, you know, pioneering of so-called painless childbirth, and also politically extremely progressive. I mean, during the period when France was trying to divest itself of Algeria, there were many political meetings held in this house. I mean, it was a salon without any question, you know. It's a living room, but it's also a public place. And Paul Nelson, an American architect living in Paris, never built his Maison Suspendu. He's very inspired by the Maison de Verre. but really it's a rather clunky item, never built. And, but I want to touch on a tricky point, which will, I mean, there's something, I think there's something very enigmatic about the house. I mean, what is it exactly? You know, and it's to my embarrassment, you know, the book, Modern Architecture, A Critical History, up to now, in the English version at least, has nothing to say about the Maison de Verre, because it's entirely perverse, really. But I suppose I unconsciously felt that where does one put the Maison de Verre, you know, in the story? All right, it's a very much abridged story. So, and in fact, in the French edition of the book, there is a new chapter inserted on France between the wars, and the Maison de Verre does, in fact, appear there. But that doesn't really completely settle the enigmatic aspect of this house. And I want to, well, I want to say, you know, that I think that, you know, well, I got around to, influenced by this book by Michel Carouge of 1975, called Les Machines Célibataires. It struck me that you could think of the Maison de Verre as a bachelor machine, you know. And of course, I'm not arguing that there was an influence of Duchamp or on, well, what they have in common, the Maison de Verre and Duchamp's large glass, is that the Maison de Verre is a kind of piece of architecture which in some sense is anti-architecture. I mean, is it an interior, or is it, what is it exactly, you know, because it's underneath this other, it's an insertion in a way. And so there's that issue. And then, you know, of course, quite overtly, Duchamp's large glass was anti-painting. And let me just, I just want to quote from this essay. This is myself, I'm quoting myself, it's a terrible form, but anyway. This is not to suggest that the conceptual structure of Duchamp's Le Grand Verre and Chareau's La Maison de Verre have similar self-conscious origin, but rather that they both homologically structured machines, that is to say, you know, this male-female business runs throughout the house. And I'm very indebted to Helene Lipstadt, by the way, who first drew my attention to the fact that subordinate female figures were placed in positions of relative power in the house. So the nurse, female, on the entry is in a power position controlling the people coming into the house. And the maid, or the, yes, who has a particular room that is high up above the kitchen, a workroom that looks down into the main double height space and also into the courtyard. So she pointed out to me that you have, in two cases, women in positions of surveillance, actually, in relation to the house, you know. I think it's very clever insight. And so I wrote, you know, have a similar self-conscious origin, but rather they are both homologically structured machines that have more to do with Alfred Jarry's 1893 science fiction concept of pataphysics, the science of the imaginary solutions, than with the exclusively rational precepts of Cartesian civilization. As a result, certain common themes become apparent in the two works. In the first place, they display in different ways a sort of excessive and needless mechanization, while in the second, both structures are arranged in ways which, to some extent at least, have erotic or sexual connotations. In the case of Le Grand Verre, this is well established and by now generally accepted. In the case of the Maison de Verre, we have little to go on except that the plan of the house lends itself to a reading which makes it appear as though it were a bachelor machine. Une machine célibataire. According to the definition of Michel Carouge, and I'll just quote the Chareau's definition. To the contrary of real machines and even large part of imaginary but rational and useful machines, such as Jules Verne's Nautilus or the rockets of science fiction, the bachelor machine appears first and foremost as the machine that is impossible, useless, incomprehensible, delirious. Each bachelor machine is a system of images composed of two equal and equivalent ensembles. One of these is the sexual ensemble. By definition, this is comprised of two elements, masculine and feminine. The other part is the mechanical ensemble, also composed of two parts, two mechanical elements which correspond respectively to the two masculine and feminine components of the sexual ensemble. And, well, that's my argument, basically, that, Michel Chareau in this book doesn't talk about the Maison de Verre, but I think there is something, the Maison de Verre is coded for sure, and in a strange way. And I think the excess of, the excess of the functionalism, they're very elegant and also functional in many cases, but also over the top, that I think characterizes a key and mysterious aspect about the Maison de Verre. I think I could show, if you can bear it, a film made by Robert Vickery, because, and Robert Vickery, to be honest, I don't know whether Robert Vickery is alive or not, because I lost contact with him completely. He stayed in England. He's an architect somewhere in the provinces. But he made this film, and I think it's a bit uptight. He's a bit uptight himself. But anyway, without him and without Michael Karapetian, I wouldn't have been able to, somehow do this measurement of the Maison de Verre and the record of it at a certain time. So if you have the film, we could show it maybe. It's 10 minutes.
In a quiet street leading off Boulevard Saint-Germain, there is one of the least known but most important houses of the 20th century. Constructed within the fabric of an older building, a cantilevered steel frame supports external walls of glass lenses or plain sheet glass. It has become known as La Maison de Verre, the House of Glass. The house contains both a family home and a doctor's consulting room. Visitors enter the body of the house and separate at the bottom of the main stair. The doctor's clients continue to a ground floor waiting area, where clear glazing set in a wall of diffusing lenses allows limited views into the rear garden. The family home starts on the first floor, reached by a small passenger lift or by the main staircase. Spatial separation and privacy within the house is provided by screens, spanning from floor to ceiling and taking many forms, being folding, pivoted, rotating or rolling. A pivoting glass panel controls access to the main staircase, and veins of perforated metal offer visual privacy. A cantilevered pivot door provides casual access at other times. The staircase leads to the major double-height space, the salon. A balustrade of storage fittings surround the stairwell and define the space. The salon is overlooked by the balcony leading to the bedrooms on the floor above. Brackets cantilevered from the floors carry cupboards or shelves, and screens of folded and curved perforated metal. These can be transparent, translucent, or visually opaque, depending on light or viewpoint. Footsteps are muffled on rubber-studded floor tiles or timber block. Functions are emphasized by the steel frame, which stands clear of the vertical hopper ventilators and the luminous facade. Heat is diffused through ducts in the hollow floor structure. Within this envelope is a rich collection of beautiful objects, paintings, tapestries, sculpture, furniture, and books. As darkness falls, the luminous walls come alive. External flood lamps throw light upwards onto the ceilings inside. Some light is reflected into the courtyard itself. The lenses shimmer as one passes, and they become an insubstantial element of the construction. Lighting is controlled by remote switches mounted on freestanding tubing and connected to relays on a central fuse and switchboard. Internal lighting is supplemented in the salon by troughs in front of the upper cupboards, throwing a warm light off the timber panels and onto the ceiling. It is truly a house of transformations, using the qualities of modern materials to alter the use of the house according to need and in response to the hour of the day. The rear elevation reveals the whole building and the fluid handling of the translucent walls of the modern house. The new steel structure supporting the attic stories leaves its imprint in the many bolted column connections clearly evident in the salon. A journey through the house reveals the invention applied to separating spaces and providing privacy. Positive closure is achieved by sliding screens, solid and faced with perforated sheet metal. One provides access to the upper staircase from the head of the main stair. In the space under the stair, a circular shutter opens to reveal a freestanding cupboard of cleaning materials. At the rear of the salon, a larger sliding screen closes off the private study area. Within the study, an open balustrade allows the doctor to speak to the receptionist below, or curtains can be drawn for a quiet daytime rest space. From this space, a sliding screen gives access to Madame d'Alsace's sitting room, which has a second glass screen to allow visual but not audible continuity. In this most private day space, there is a stairway to the bedroom above, but even that can be closed, like a ship's gangway, from above. A grating rolls forward from under the bed to stop the stair opening unintentionally. The bedroom opens directly into the main bathroom, and at the entrance, both glazed and aluminium screens are available, visibility or privacy. At this second floor, clear glazing and a balcony allow open views down into the garden. From the corridor, a view into the bathroom is closed off by a pivoting pedestal cupboard for linen and small garments. The bathroom itself is formed almost entirely in heavy-gauge polished aluminium sheet to offer a range of cupboards and facilities while washing or shaving. La Maison de Verre is unique. It is built largely from engineering materials, steel, glass, alloy and rubber, but it is not a machine. It celebrates the genius of a remarkable design team, responding to gifted clients with a fresh view of 20th century living.
That's it. If there are any... If there are any questions, if
Around, if you have a question, just raise your hand.
Thank you. Do you like what Peter Rubin has done with the house?
Robert.
Is it Robert Rubin?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I haven't, yes, to tell the truth, I haven't seen it since Robert Rubin occupied it. And so I can't really answer that, you know. I mean, I think there's sort of an inevitable loss, because I think he has 16 pieces of the original furniture on loan from the Delsas family. Actually, the Rubin's purchase of the house was quite a saga, I think. It was effected through Marc Vellet, the grandson of the original clients, and Robert Rubin. But you can imagine that it's not a small family, and when the deal was first made evident, there was a lot of tension. And so certain things, of course, were removed from the house because there's a lot of very valuable art in the house. And so that almost, I don't think any of that remains. And as I said, there are 16 pieces of original furniture on loan, but, you know, the house was not only a montage, collage in its actual first, as it were, creation, but also the way they lived in it. You know, it was a layered by their own life in it, and that was, you know, a quintessential part of the house that when I saw it 50 years ago. And I saw it once or twice after that, but not since Rubin has occupied it. I mean, it has to be also said that Rubin really played an essential role in maintaining the house, because he had to clean out all the plenum heating ducts and so on, which had not been touched since the house was built, and were full of you know, years and years of dust, and many other things like that. I think the house needed intervention by somebody who really cared for it and had the capacity to restore it somewhat, you know. The family itself had thought at different points to give it to the French state, but they somehow decided not to do that, fearing, I think, that they wouldn't, that they wouldn't treat it correctly. You know, the Villa Savoie in Poissy by Le Corbusier is, of course, that was given to the state, and you know, it's not bad, but the problem with the houses as museums it's a kind of problem, I think, a little bit, house museum. I suppose they were trying to avoid it. Anyway, in the end, the deal with Rubin and Vele was, you know, meant that Rubin would occupy the house, and he is occupying the house, and will occupy it permanently in a few years, I think. At the moment, he's partly living in New York and partly living there. I hope to see it one day, but I haven't seen it in his occupation.
Thank you so much. So I have a question, not really related to design, but so one of the things added to the value of this structure is the way it was constructed to accommodate with the very difficult tenant upstairs. So I've always have a question, what happened to her after that? Because, you know, because of her was so difficult that the way the structure was built have to go around her place. So do you know what happened to her after that and her relationship with this structure?
I think she had a separate staircase to give access to the unit above.
Right.
And which was actually not meant walking up 3 floors, you know, it was not the easiest thing to do. Yeah. And, you know, eventually she must have died. And then what happened is the family rebuilt that floor and another floor on top. And so the daughter and her husband, Vele, the family of Vele d'Alsace, you know, lived actually above the Maison de Verre. And the Maison de Verre was not sort of permanently occupied for quite some time. I think maybe one would have to say it wasn't really permanently. After the death of the original clients, you know, it was not really occupied on a permanent basis until Rubin, I think that was more or less the situation. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting issue. But, okay, I mean, this house had been published once in L'Architecture d'aujourd'hui in 1932, and it would be published after the war by Alberto Sartoris in Encyclopedia of Modern Architecture, published in Italian by Hopli, Milan. And the house appears in that collection of many, many modern buildings with about 3 or 4 photographs, but no drawings, and so on. And somehow or other, there was a woman, an English woman who, working in Paris, I think for Candelis, Josek and Woods, drew up the first plans of the house, which were published in the British magazine Architecture and Building News, and they were very beautiful drawings. I mean, she measured, obviously, each floor plan, and then, you know, they were exquisite drawings with, you know, precisely drafted, but the lines inked in by hand, so there's slightly vibration on the line. And those 3 plans were published in architecture and building news. And then people like Jim Sterling and also James Sterling, Colin St. John Wilson became interested in the house. And that's through that circle, really, that I became aware of the house. And Richard Rogers also wrote an early article on the house that appeared in Domus. So, but the British really kind of rediscovered the house because I think the French somehow had forgotten about it altogether. Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about the machine for bachelor and the male version, that is. Wouldn't you say that Eileen Gray's house is the counterpoint to that, the female version, and have you ever tried to frame it in that way?
Well, no, not really. It is. I mean, it's very. I think it is comparable. These two works. I mean, the Eileen Gray house is much smaller, and but it also has a certain playful attitude towards function. You know, and sort of some ingenious conveniences, that can be used in daily living. Is also present in that house. And even she sort of uses lettering to indicate what the function is in certain parts of that house. So I think it is an interesting comparison. But I think the Maison de Verre is kind of so insistently coded. This male-female thing is sort of running through the house, And that's not true of the Eileen Gray house.
I think we have 2 more questions.
I have a question about the aspect of a gynecological inspiration for the medical equipment and the use of sanitary materials and even things that swivel or mirrors and lighting. And just, it seems to continue. Plus, you mentioned all the bidets.
Yes, I mean...
And the privacy, the curtains being drawn.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, that's... Yes, I think one can't really say it's an accident that this was a house designed for a gynecologist, There's something about the house which seems to emanate that. And so there is that sort of crossover between function of certain medical equipment and the functionalism in the house. But, and there's I think one can fairly say there's somewhat obsessive use of bidets throughout the house, It does sort of point in that direction as well, And the interesting thing about Rubin's purchase of the house is that as Rubin's second wife was a patient of, I think, Dr. Vellet, And she was passionate about the house, which ends up, I think, of them buying the house, basically. So this kind of connection is there.
I have a question. You were saying that Rogers wrote an article about it?
Yes, in Domus, brief,
when was
short.
That? Was that before working with piano and before Foster did that sort of work? What age was he when he wrote?
Yeah, I have difficulty remembering that. I can't remember, to tell the truth. I think it's before we measured the house, so it's before 60, well, we measured the house 66, really. So I think it's like a year or 2 years before that, I think. I don't remember, but it's a very short piece, But as I said, the James Sterling and Colin St. John Wilson knew about the house, and Richard knew about the house through them, I think. And this much earlier, the plans of the house by this woman, Margaret Tallant. That's probably the first. I don't know how people, how people first got a sense that this was a very extraordinary place. But I can't remember the exact date. But I think it's before we started to work on it. So it's 63 maybe, something like that.
Okay, well, I think that might be all the time we have, but thank you everyone so much for coming.